The town of Willow Creek, tucked between wide Texas plains and a stretch of sleepy backroads, wasn't the kind of place where billionaires ever stopped. The air smelled like motor oil hay and the faint sweetness of fresh rain that never lasted long. In a town where the average man's pride was his pickup truck, a bright red Ferrari Prototipo, worth over $200 million, was something out of a dream. That morning, Jake Miller, a 35-year-old small-town mechanic with oil-stained hands and a heart as steady as his wrench, was under the hood of an old Ford when he heard it, that soft, alien purr of a foreign engine. It was smooth, refined, and definitely not American. He looked up, squinting through the garage window. What he saw nearly made him drop his wrench. A gleaming red Ferrari rolled to a stop in front of his shop. Dust swirled around it like a halo. The car looked like a spaceship had landed among pickup trucks and tractors. When the door opened, a woman stepped out, heels clicking, sunglasses gleaming, confidence dripping from every move. She was Isabella Hart, heiress of the Hart automotive empire, a name whispered across Wall Street and car auctions alike. Everyone in the country knew her for her elegance, ambition, and her unapproachable demeanor. But Jake didn't know any of that. To him, she was just another customer. "Morning, ma'am," he said, wiping his hands on an old rag. "What seems to be the trouble?" Isabella gave a short laugh, half disbelief, half curiosity. "Do you even know what this is?" she asked, nodding toward the Ferrari. Jake tilted his head, inspecting it. "Looks like a Ferrari that doesn't run," he replied with a calm smile. Her brows arched. She wasn't used to people talking to her that way. "This is a LaFerrari Prototipo, one of one," she said sharply. "No one's been able to fix it, not even my team in Los Angeles. They said the engine's calibration system is fried beyond repair." Jake leaned down, running his fingers gently over the hood. The paint shimmered under the Texas sun. "Then maybe they stopped listening before the engine started talking," he said quietly. She frowned. "Engines don't talk," he chuckled. "That's your first mistake." Inside his small, sun-faded garage, everything was simple. Old posters of Ford Mustangs and Harley-Davidsons, a fan spinning lazily, and a radio humming soft country tunes. Isabella's car looked completely out of place, a diamond in a room full of rust. Jake popped the hood and whistled low. "Well, she's a beauty, all right. But she's been mistreated." Isabella crossed her arms, annoyed yet intrigued. "You think you can fix what my team couldn't?" Jake looked up at her, eyes steady. "Ma'am, I don't think." "I fix." The confidence in his tone silenced her for a moment. He wasn't arrogant, just sure. It was a kind of certainty money couldn't buy. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work, his movements deliberate and graceful, like a man who spoke the language of machines better than people. Isabella stood by, trying not to look impressed, but she was. Every few minutes, Jake would mutter something to himself. "She's choking on fuel," or "airflow's not breathing right." Isabella had never seen anyone talk to an engine like it was alive. Hours passed. Sweat dripped down Jake's neck, the Texas sun heating the metal walls. Isabella eventually removed her designer jacket and sat on a stool, watching him work. It was the first time in a long while she'd just waited. "Why are you even here?" Jake finally asked without looking up. "You could have had that fancy car of yours shipped anywhere." She sighed, glancing away. "Because I've tried anywhere. I've been to Switzerland, Germany, California. No one could make it work. My father told me once that real craftsmanship comes from the heart of small towns. I figured I'd test that theory." Jake grinned slightly. "Smart man, your father." Her eyes softened. "He passed away last year." The sound of the wrench stopped. Jake looked up, his expression sincere. "I'm sorry to hear that," she nodded quietly. "He built this car. It was his last project before he died. I wanted to hear it start again." For the first time, Jake understood. This wasn't about luxury or pride. It was about grief, about something lost. He took a deep breath and said gently, "Then let's bring him back for a minute." As night fell, the town grew quiet. Jake kept working, his garage lights casting long golden beams through the darkness. Isabella stayed, something she'd never done before. Usually she had assistants, chauffeurs and managers to handle her errands. But tonight, it was just her and a man with grease on his hands and kindness in his eyes. Finally, Jake tightened the last bolt, closed the hood, and stepped back. "All right," he said, smiling faintly. Moment of truth. He turned the key. The Ferrari coughed once, then twice, and then roared to life. The sound filled the night, deep and powerful, echoing through the fields. Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. For a moment, her father's voice echoed in her memory. The same sound she'd heard in his workshop years ago. Her eyes welled with tears. Jake looked over, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Told you. She just needed someone to listen." She laughed through her tears, shaking her head. "You have no idea what you just did," Jake smiled softly. "I didn't fix a car, ma'am. I fixed a memory." The next morning, news spread fast through the small town. The billionaire woman's Ferrari was running again, and the local mechanic had done the impossible. But Jake didn't care about the attention. When Isabella returned to pick up the car, she found Jake cleaning his tools. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "How much do I owe you?" Jake shrugged. "Just pay what you think it's worth." She blinked, confused. "Do you have any idea what this car is worth?" He smiled. "Doesn't matter. You can't put a price on soul." That line hit her harder than she expected. In her world, everything had a price. Deals, emotions, even loyalty. But here, in this dusty Texas garage, she'd found something different, something genuine. Before she left, Isabella turned to him and said softly, "You're wasted here, Jake." He looked at her, leaning against the doorway. "Maybe, but peace ain't wasted on me," and with that, she drove away, the Ferrari's powerful growl fading into the horizon, carrying a piece of her father's memory and a piece of something new she couldn't quite name. That night, as Jake locked up the garage, he noticed something on his workbench, an envelope with his name on it. Inside was a handwritten note. "You didn't just fix my car. You reminded me what it means to feel again." Isabella Hart, and tucked behind it, a small silver Ferrari emblem from her father's collection. Jake smiled, the night air cool against his skin. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need money. He had fixed what truly mattered. 2 weeks passed after the night Jake Miller brought a dead Ferrari back to life. For Willow Creek, that was already a legend, told in diners, gas stations, and dusty barbershops. Jake fixed a billionaire's car, old Tom at the cafe said every morning, and didn't even charge her right. Jake, however, didn't want to be a hero. He went back to his quiet rhythm: grease, engines, coffee, silence. The Ferrari's echo had faded, but sometimes, when the wind blew right, he could still hear that roar. Then, one afternoon, a black SUV stopped outside his garage. Out stepped Isabella Hart. No heels this time, no designer coat. Just jeans, sneakers, and a baseball cap. She looked different, lighter. Jake was under the hood of a Chevy when he heard her voice. "Miss Hart," he said, blinking. "Didn't expect you'd ever come back to a dump like this." She smiled faintly. "I miss the honesty," Jake chuckled. "That's a first." Isabella looked around the garage. The clutter, the hum, the smell of real work. Then she got to the point. "I want to hire you," she said. Jake frowned. "Hire me? I'm opening a new division, Hart Motors Experimental. We're building sustainable high-performance engines. My best engineers can't get it right. But you listened to that Ferrari. You understood it." Jake wiped his hands. "I appreciate the offer, ma'am, but I belong here. People here need me." Isabella studied him. "He wasn't lying, but don't you want more?" she asked softly. "A real lab, a team, a chance to make something that changes the future." Jake looked at the open road through the window. "The future starts right here if you know what you're fixing." She smiled sadly. "You sound like my father." That evening she refused to take no for an answer. "Come with me for 1 week," she said. "If you hate it, I'll never bother you again." Jake finally sighed. 1 week. "But I'm bringing my daughter, Mia." Isabella blinked. "You have a daughter?" "Yup, 16, smart as hell. Knows more about carburetors than half the town." "Deal," Isabella said, smiling. 2 days later, Jake and Mia found themselves stepping into Hart Motors headquarters in Austin, Texas, a cathedral of glass, steel, and electricity. Inside the lab, engineers in crisp white coats and high-tech goggles eyed Jake like he was a ghost from another century. His old boots squeaked on the spotless floor. One man whispered, "He's the guy who fixed the Ferrari." Jake ignored the chatter. He placed his toolbox on the workbench, and the silence deepened. Isabella led him to a huge, half-assembled electric engine. "This," she said, "is Project Phoenix, an electric supercar meant to run without fossil fuel or sound." Jake tilted his head. "Without sound? You trying to kill the soul of driving?" She laughed. "We're trying to save the planet." He grinned. "Well, maybe we can do both." Mia wandered around the lab, touching tools, sketching designs on her notepad. The engineers found her curiosity both adorable and terrifying. Later that day, Jake faced the problem. The car's power unit overheated and failed under full load. He listened, not just with his tools, but with his intuition. "Everyone's focused on control," he said. "But engines aren't meant to be controlled. They're meant to flow." He adjusted a valve angle by hand, something no one had tried because the data said it wouldn't work. When he powered it up again, the engine hummed, steady, strong, alive. The engineer stared in disbelief. One said under his breath, "That's impossible." Isabella's eyes widened. She hadn't seen anyone move so naturally within chaos since her father. Jake just smiled. "She's breathing a gay over the next few days." Mia and Isabella grew close. The young girl's innocence and honesty cut through the billionaire's polished shell. One night, while Jake was still in the lab, Isabella took Mia out to the rooftop. The city sparkled beneath them. "You know," Isabella said softly, "your father's one of the rare ones." Mia smiled proudly. "He says machines are like people. If you listen, they'll tell you what's wrong." Isabella looked at her. "Did he ever tell you what's wrong with him?" Mia laughed. "He misses my mom. She died when I was 10. But he says he can still fix everything else." Something tightened in Isabella's chest. For all her money and success, she'd never met people who measured life in love instead of wealth. The next morning, the board of Hart Motors found out Jake wasn't a licensed engineer. The executives were furious. "He has no credentials, no degree. He can't even be here." Isabella defended him, but pressure mounted. "We can't risk millions on a garage mechanic." Jake overheard the argument. Instead of fighting, he calmly began packing his tools. When Isabella found him, he said, "It's okay. I knew this was temporary." She stopped him at the door. "No, Jake, you belong here." He looked into her eyes. "No, I belong where engines still have souls, and people still mean what they say." Then he left. Days later, disaster struck. During a test drive, the Project Phoenix engine failed catastrophically, nearly causing an explosion. The board demanded answers. Investors threatened to pull out. Isabella sat alone in the lab, staring at the silent machine, her reflection trembling in its chrome surface. She realized Jake had been right. They'd built perfection without heart. At midnight, she drove straight to Willow Creek. Jake was sitting on his porch, sipping coffee under a sky full of Texas stars when her headlights appeared. "You were right," she said quietly, stepping out. "The car failed without you, without—" Listening, Jake looked at her, tired but not surprised. "You're here to ask for help again," she nodded. "Not for me, for them. For my father's legacy." Jake stood, finished his coffee and smiled. "Then let's finish what he started." Back in the Hart Motors lab, Jake and Mia worked through the night beside Isabella. The engineers watched as he rewired circuits, adjusted calibrations, and guided them patiently, teaching, not commanding. At sunrise, they tested the engine once more. The machine purred softly, a perfect harmony of silence and strength. When the prototype accelerated across the test track, smooth and flawless, applause erupted. Isabella laughed through tears. "You did it," Jake corrected her gently. "We did it." A week later, Hart Motors unveiled Project Phoenix to the world. Isabella stood on stage, dazzling under spotlights. But when reporters asked how she did it, she pointed to the crowd. "That man," she said, Taught me something no $1 billion could buy. To listen. The camera panned to Jake, standing with Mia in his old leather jacket, smiling shyly. After the event, Isabella walked up to him. "So, what now?" she asked. Jake looked at the engine behind the glass, and then at her. "Now we build machines that remember they have a heart," she nodded. "You taught me that." Epilogue months later. A small plaque appeared outside Heart Motors' main lab, dedicated to Jake Miller, the mechanic who taught us to listen. And every now and then, when the city went quiet, Isabella could swear she heard the faint sound of a Ferrari's engine, alive again, whispering its gratitude across the Texas night.